Cosmos, I want you to put at least 3 force bubbles around yourself and take point. Do as much damage as you can. Really use the Omni power. The rest of you take position behind him. Whatever makes it past him, you do your best to take them out. Olympian, I'm leaving you in charge, Darkspeed said. Me? Where will you be? Olympian asked. I'm going to be searching for Vector. I'm the only one fast enough to fight him. Cosmos, if you should see me holding Vector down, destroy his golden arm. I understand. Good hunting, Cosmos said. Thanks, Darkspeed said and blinked away. Okay, that leaves me in charge. Cosmos, make a line in the ground, Olympian said as he pointed to the ground. You keep your power on that side. Use it to do as much damage as possible. We'll stay on this side of the line. That way you don't have to worry about hitting your own team. Good idea, Cosmos said and did what he was told. Ion, you take right and 50 yards back from the line. Eclipse, you take left and 50 yards back from the line. I'll take center back 80 yards. With any luck, that will funnel them my way, Olympian said. Olympian put his hand on Cosmos' shoulder to hold him while the others took their positions. Once they were alone, Olympian had something to say just to Cosmos. Look, I know this is a big thing to ask of you, to be a warrior at age 11, Olympian said. I'll be 12 in 2 weeks, Cosmos said. Good. I just have one question for you. Would you want to see Glimmer die today? Cosmos made a pained face. No. The villains who tried to kill your parents and kidnap Alex are the same as what will be here shortly. You're the most powerful of us. You need to be ready to unleash your Omni power without pity. I can do that, Cosmos said with a shake in his voice. Think of the people fighting behind you for their lives and think that you could prevent it by just using your power. Think of what would happen to Glimmer and let that be in the front of your mind, Olympian said. Is this how you get ready for a fight? You're getting the crash course. Just say this in your head as the fight approaches. Glimmer will die if I am weak. The rest will just happen. Cosmos didn't say anything. He just made multiple force bubbles around himself and floated up into his position above the field. He tried not to think of Olympian's words, but they kept running through his mind. Cosmos looked behind him to see Saber and his air-covered team flying about. His eyes darted back and forth looking for Glimmer, and he couldn't find her. She must be invisible, Cosmos thought in a panic. How are things going? Darkspeed thought to Virtuoso. Bioforce is scanning and we're moving along. Are you all set? Virtuoso thought. I have my little surprise ready and I've checked the cameras. Did you catch Olympian's speech? I did, very moving. But I'm not exactly sure he should be a motivational coach. Why's that? Right after he addressed everyone, he tried to get Cosmos fired up enough to become the Angel of Death. Did it work? I can't read Cosmos' mind. Cosmos' mind raced as he tried to think of what would do the most damage to the villains as they showed up. Every minute that ticked away seemed like an eternity. His hands were shaking in his gloves as Olympian's words infected his thoughts. Inside his helmet, Cosmos could tell his eyes kept glowing on and off as his adrenaline surged. How many minutes are we in? Darkspeed thought to Virtuoso. 9 minutes in, Virtuoso thought back. Are you still predicting 10 to 30 minutes to find him? Yes, we're now at 1 to 21 to find him. Cosmos felt energy in front of him like the kind portals make. Heads up! Cosmos yelled back to Olympian. Olympian turned around and used his super loud voice. Incoming villains! Cosmos found himself standing with his feet apart, twisting his feet against the bubble until they felt solid. He dropped his head and shook his hands loose. They weren't shaking anymore. Cosmos summoned the Omni power and let it wash over and through him. Multiple portals opened in front of the first wave team. Olympian counted 8 portals, all at varying distances from them. The portals were dark gray and gave no indication of what may come out of them. Cosmos never felt the Omni power fill and charge him as it did now. He pulled in as much of the power as he could. It made him feel normal somehow, like everything would be alright. The Omni power was his comfort now. Villains poured out of the portals in front of them. Olympian guessed there must be 50 or 60 of them, each wearing a different style and color of costume. Some took flight immediately, but most ran across the ground toward first wave. Squirt, you're up! Olympian screamed. Cosmos didn't like that name. He raised his head and opened his hands to let the crackling energy touch the air. The floating bubble came swiftly to the ground, and in one motion, Cosmos dropped to one knee and placed a hand on the bottom of the bubble. In a flash, the ground from the line behind Cosmos to over a mile in distance was now super steel. The bubble flew back up into the air. Olympian and the others could see that most of the villains were now super steel statues. This should make a nice conductor, Cosmos thought. Thick blue lightning discharged from Cosmos' bubble. It reached down to the super steel ground below and electrified it. The blue lightning didn't disappear after it struck. It just got thicker and stronger. To those looking on, they looked like angry blue energy tentacles that scarred the earth below. The super steel smoked and chunks blew away as more tentacles grew. Villains who were even grazed by the tentacles were vaporized. "That's it! Light them up!" Olympian yelled in his super voice. Despite the destructive show, some of the villains were making it through. Eclipse was the first to be challenged by villains running head over heels from Cosmos' fury. The giant was standing ready as the enemy ran to him off balance. His new two-handed mace was quickly put to use on villains that were not ready for his strength. Ion was quick to dispatch what came his way. With his speed, Ion found himself just throwing villains back into Cosmos' electric tentacles. To Ion, it seemed like an efficient way to play the game. With that idea, he found himself being more of a goalie that just kicked the villains back into play. Olympian's thoughts were of his older brother Ajax and his young cousins that didn't survive the attack. Olympian flexed his body hard, like a piece of omnium. The chainmail glove on his right hand groaned and creaked as he gripped the handle of his chopper with irresistible force. The first villain that was unfortunate enough to face Olympian's wrath would never tell anyone about the encounter. The number of villains that poured out of the portals was enormous. Even with the damage that Cosmos was inflicting, the number making it past first wave was substantial. Saber and his air support team quickly found themselves overworked. Cosmos' attack was not getting most of the flyers that came through the portals. Saber had Newton use his gravity powers to try and bring flyers down onto the electrified field around Cosmos. He then instructed Shockwave, Isotope, and Flare to use wide attacks to damage as many flyers as possible. Saber himself and Sniper attacked individual flyers that were able to get through the defenses he had set. Ranger had Second Wave broken into 3 pairs that would watch each other's back. Echo was the odd one out since he could watch his own back. The 3 pairs stood forward and the 1,000 Echoes stood behind them. Ranger's team was mostly made of hitters in armor, Chain, and the Echoes. Some of the villains got past the first 6, but none made it past the Echoes. Third Wave kept watching in all directions, waiting for a fight to ensue. The healers were waiting for the sign that someone was wounded. The stealths on the hard target team waited, and soon they could tell invisible assassins had made it through the fray. She ordered Shroud and Bob to stay invisible and work as a team as they hunted. She set herself and Glimmer up in 2 different zones to detect assassins that would attack their teammates. Kinetic was to take out any non-invisible assassins as quick as possible. "This is nuts," Darkspeed thought. "Prism alerted Arthur," Virtuoso thought. "How much longer?" "Up to 16 minutes. Why aren't you fighting?" "I can't give away my position. Not yet," Darkspeed thought back. "You're betting on Vector showing?" "I'm betting everything on it. With any luck, we can end this war before it starts." Darkspeed had his speed turned up so high, even Saber and Sniper seemed to be flying in slow motion. He made sure to keep scanning back and forth, looking for his target. Darkspeed's blood ran cold when he saw a figure running in from the side of the battle. The white and gold figure moved normally to Darkspeed's eyes. Darkspeed left his hidden position and crept toward the battlefield. Darkspeed didn't move as quickly as Vector. He couldn't, as he kept his body low and hidden in the rocks. Surprise was the key to Darkspeed's plan. Vector was now jogging through the battlefield. Those fighting looked like they were frozen in time compared to how fast Vector was moving. Darkspeed was sure he was after Cosmos. He did his best to stay hidden and get close. "One shot, if you're lucky," Darkspeed thought to himself. Vector finally came up to the line where Cosmos' super steel began. Behind him, Olympian was slowly swinging his chopper at a group of villains. Vector raised his hand and pointed a finger at Cosmos. A black beam of energy fired from Vector and pierced the bubbles around Cosmos. The multiple force bubbles were able to dissipate and deflect most of Vector's black energy. The portion that did make it through the bubble struck Cosmos in the back, like a glancing blow striking upward. His omnium reinforced armor was scarred from the black energy. Cosmos was thrown up and into his own bubble. The force was so great that he spun head over heels in the bubble from the force of the impact. Cosmos remembered his training and never let his bubbles fail. They resealed and became even stronger. The pain of the impact was, however, enough to distract him from flying. The bubble crashed to the ground. Vector watched the blue lightning stop and the bubbles around the young Omni fall to the ground. When he was sure the electricity had dissipated, Vector stepped closer to get a clean shot at Cosmos. As he watched the bubbles strike the ground in slow motion, he held out his hand to fire another shot of black energy.